This is a hot cut. It's not a hammer.
Okay.
It generally having an apprentice or someone holding the hot piece of metal, and this is for trimming or cutting.
Okay.
And you hold that on there, take another hammer and cut whatever you're needing. But yes,
Okay.
It does work very well for texturing.
Okay.
Different people use different tools for texturing. Instead of the lines, you can use, well, let me grab it here. This one, you can see the difference between the two. This one, we used a ball peen
Okay.
to put the little rounded marks in it, as opposed to the lines.
The lines, yes.
It's deciding what the public wants is difficult.
Well, you can never predict what people are going to want.
Yeah, that is true.
That's what art is all about.
Sometimes they would rather have S hooks. Sometimes they want crosses. You can never second guess the public.
That's true.
And if you make up one type or another before you get on site, sometimes they sell, sometimes they don't. If they don't, then you're stuck with whatever stock you've used up to manufacture what you think they want.
Well, at least there is one thing in your favor. You're not working with a perishable product there.
No, if it doesn't sell, it hangs around forever.
There you go. I guess the negative side is that if it's very large, then you've got a lot of weight you've got to truck around.
Yeah. Hence, that's why we use the 1-ton truck. So if I don't own a regular car or SUV, it doubles in my business as well as my playtime.
Yes.
One of the other guys that I blacksmith with has a cross peen hammer. Oh. He uses a cross peen like this, and then he has put striations along this, and it does something similar but not quite.
Oh, yeah.
And it this last year when I was up to Bird City, he was complaining that it wasn't making deep enough striations in what he was doing. So I put it in the vise and took a cold chisel and deepened those for him. He says, "Hey, that works real good." And he said, "I hadn't thought about using the chisel to deepen those marks."
Yes.
Then of course when the mark is there, pound it and
Okay.
make. Now where this one's a lot sharper, I can pound with this one and it makes them rounder
Yes.
than long ones, as opposed to using the ball peen
Yes.
and making small round divots in the metal.
Yes. And I've noticed that you haven't heated up the metal on your crosses there, so it must be a little bit softer metal than your hammers actually are.
Yeah, This stuff is mild steel, and it's relatively soft. Like you said, the harder stuff, I've got some on the back of my pickup, is spring steel, and you can anneal it or soften it and bring it down where it will mark up like this, or as they call it, texturing.
Yes, yes.
And then if you need something with a good cutting edge, you can heat treat it.
Yeah.
And make it a lot harder and a lot tougher.
Yeah.
And that's a process in itself. Bring it up to a bright cherry, or what they call a transformation range. And I was talking to the kids yesterday about that. The transformation range, I don't keep a magnet, but some of the other guys do. And when you heat it up, once it reaches transformation range, a magnet will not stick to.
Yes.
And that way they know approximately the heat, and then they can do whatever they need to and quench that.
Yes.
And once it's quenched, the higher carbon steel, then it becomes brittle like glass.
Right.
So you have to be real careful with it. I have dropped pieces that got away from me and they fell on the floor and snapped or shattered.
My.
And
yes.
I was up the creek.
That's an amazing property.
Yeah.
Of steel.
Then once you have quenched it, then you take and clean that off with a file or a grinder back to white metal, and then you can start heating it again and watch your color oxidations run. And for cold chisels, medium to dark straw colored, and you can get some pretty hard depending on what metals you've used.
Yes.
And I guess you'd call it the litmus test or acid test. If I make a good chisel, I can take a piece of 1/4 inch or 3/8 mild steel, clamp it in the vise, and I can, in just a few blows, I can cut that off, shear it off.
Wow.
And it won't mark that edge. Now this is, I'm guessing, because I haven't done a spark test on it, this is high carbon steel for a cutter.
Yes.
And it's kind of a specialty larger chisel for cutting whatever.
Yes.
But a lot of the blacksmiths made whatever they needed to facilitate what they were doing at the time.
Yes.
And that's the good thing about it. If you don't have a tool that suits you, you can either modify or make up whatever you need to do what you're doing.
Yes, that's incredible. All right, well, you have been pestering me with trivia the last few days, and I have thought of one that I can ask you.
Okay, I will try my best to answer.
What is the name of the blacksmith on the Gunsmoke television show?
Muley.
Very good. I figured that you were of an old enough range where you would remember those.
Yeah,
Yes.
He was blacksmith, and then in a few episodes he was also gunsmith.
Yes.
And back in those days, a gunsmith had to have the blacksmithing trade because he manufactured parts or welded parts back for the firearms that he was repairing
Yes.
and making.
Yes.
And triggers, hammers, springs, sears,
Right.
whatever
Right.
part that might. And a lot of the mountain men had a basic working knowledge of metals because it was a long ways to St. Louis from the Rocky Mountains.
Yes. Yes.
And they heated their, if they broke something, they had to heat it. And basically forge weld it or manufacture another one. And they tried to carry a small amount of metals so that they could repair without taking a year to go back to and get the parts, pieces. Now when the rendezvous came about and they started bringing stuff out, then the traders would carry parts, pieces, scrap metal, whatever. And generally at the rendezvous they had a blacksmith or two that could repair things that the trappers and mountain men couldn't. And also the trappers, if they had a trap that was broken or bent, they had to be able to repair it because it greatly degraded their ability to take whatever animals they were after.
I newly was in the Gunsmoke program. Basically, when Gunsmoke went from black and white to being colorized. I think Festus came along during that period of time as well. I can't recall a blacksmith being featured as a main character on Gunsmoke back in the black and white days. Can you?
I was too young to pay much attention. I was, like you said, watching the series. And yeah, that was a treat for us to be able to watch Gunsmoke. My mother didn't care for it, but Dad enjoyed it, and so did us boys. But yeah, and the fun thing is, it was set down here within 100 miles of where I live, down here at Dodge City, Kansas. And they do have a museum and some of the memorabilia from that TV show, and it was wildly popular.
I was fortunate enough to visit there a couple of years ago during the Women's Ranch Rodeo Association National Finals. And boy, howdy, you could not keep me away from searching for the Long Branch Saloon, of which there is a replica there. That was very interesting. And then also sort of as a thing to kind of play with people's minds, I guess. I would ask people if they were local residents and if they were descendants of Matt and Kitty.
There's been a lot of ballads written about those two. And I have to give it to those people that were writing that series television show. They actually used the names, because Matt was always going up to Hayes to pick up a prisoner or taking a prisoner, and over to Spearville, which is not that far away, and the different little towns around Dodge City. And it all tied in. And it was great for us because we had been to these small outlying communities and knew a lot of it, and some of the people in our county had originated from Ford County and down there. But yeah.
All right, well, I have one last question for you before we depart for a little bit, and that is, at what period of time and what do you think the cause of the end of the blacksmithing era?
It started its decline toward the middle and later portions of the 19th century as the Industrial Revolution took place, and automation, instead of a one-off pieces that they, like on these wagons, the furniture and metalworking parts, a lot of them from back east, like I said, the automation and making them mass-produced, like a step for a wagon, they would make 100,000 of them in the factories. And that's pretty much what killed the blacksmith. But the blacksmith was very flexible, And I was talking to the school children about that. One of them had asked the same question. And they said, where did the blacksmiths go? Did they just quit? And I said, no. The blacksmith slowly evolved, or quickly evolved, depending on where he was, into becoming the mechanics that worked on vehicles and different things.
Yeah.
He just evolved into the mechanic that works on your cars, pickups, and trucks.
Yes.
A lot of them still retain some of the skills for welding and fabrication, repair on the vehicles. Vehicles of today are not like they were when I was growing up. My first old pickup was a Ford F-150, and you could crawl in that engine compartment yourself, get down in there and work on them. Now, these newer pickups, you couldn't get in that engine compartment with Vaseline and a shoehorn.
There you go.
They have made them so compact and so complex that the average person can't work on them.
Yes, sir.
And the computerized sensors and stuff that controls those engines, they've made them where the average guy cannot afford the stuff to work on them. And the more things that you introduce to make things seemingly work better, makes that just much more stuff to go wrong.
Right.
And
you've got more parts, more electronics, more things to go wrong over a period of time. And then too, having to outsource a lot of those parts, such as computer chips, has made it very difficult for us to buy new vehicles right now.
Yeah. Well, like that little drill press. It's a basic self-feed drill press. You can't buy one today that I know of that is self-feed. And
doesn't even require electricity.
Well, no. It does have a belt that you can put on it. But what I'm talking about, the self-feed, when you turn it, it'll feed itself. You can hold on to and see how that moves that around.
Yes.
And shoves it down.
Oh yes, let me get a close-up of that.
When I got the little drill press off the internet, this piece here and this was missing. This was broke off right in here. And I had to, with what was left, I had to manufacture this to make it work. And the crank was missing, so I made the crank. But and if you look close, there's a place where this has been broken. This head was broke off, and they brazed it right here.
Okay.
And put the thing back together. And one of my friends that I blacksmith with, a young lady, somebody had given her one of these, and it was broken. So she handed it off to me, and I made a jig to put everything together and hold it straight, true, so that everything would work like it was supposed to. And then I heated that cast iron up and brazed it just like these people did on this one.
Yes.
And this last year I helped her put it back together out at the hammer end. It works wonderful. It works just like this one does.
Amazing. And it will probably last for a long time still.
Well, these darn things came about in the middle 1800s, just as the Industrial Revolution was starting, and they cast these gears and this stuff to make everything, and they had the machinery to line bore that so everything turns and runs true.
Yes. Amazing.
The fun thing is about these drill presses, even the modern ones, you can modify your table and put a thing on there, and you can use them as a mini lathe to make handles for your tools.
Yes. Well, all right, Don, thank you very much for sharing some of your wisdom.
I don't know how much wisdom there is in it. It's just stuff that I have picked up over the last 20 years that I've been playing with this stuff. It's something that just about anybody can pick up and do.
Yes.
And like I was telling the kids yesterday, the blacksmith was an artisan, and I mean a true artisan. And he was a forward thinker, because when you build something in a forge, you heat things up and then you build it. But you've got to build it here before you build it in the forge and anvil, because your heat does not last that long.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a learning process. You learn how to hit, where to hit. It's not necessarily how strong you are. And I have, like I said, I have taught women to do a little iron work. And of course they're not quite as strong.
Yes.
Well, some of them are, but not quite as strong as most of the men. But they still, once they learn where and how to hit the metal and when to hit it, they do just as good a job, or in some cases better than the men.
Yes.
Blacksmith. And that was something that the little girls were amazed that not all blacksmiths were men.
Yes.
There was a lot of women artisans, and they do not get the acclaim that is really due them for the blacksmithing trade.
Yes.
But yeah, it's fun for me to work with the stuff in the old way. Yes, we have technology to do just about anything nowadays. We don't, but we do have the technologies. But some of the old technologies, well, take this drill press for instance. I can drill metals that most of them with the modern drill presses will burn up the drill bits.
Yes.
But this one rotates, and I've even got one at home that is run on an electric motor, but it moves slow enough that I can drill the harder metals and not burn up my drill bit.
Amazing.
I've had several guys go, "You can't drill that." Well, let's try it. And we were successful without destroying the machinery.
Yes.
But yeah, it's amazing. Some of the older technologies are still relevant. They really are.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you very much.
You're most welcome, sir.